Welcome back. Well, yeah, just looking ahead of the elections in Ekiti State, there you see Mr. Festus Okoye joining us today to give some perspective on what to expect tomorrow. He's a National Commissioner with INEC. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, in terms of your preparations and what to expect, we do know that 14 days ago, thereabout, INEC did say that some 47,633 double voter registration was discovered in Ekiti, and that had been sorted. So if we could start from there, could you give us what is the latest scenario regarding registration of voters? Because even till date, some still think, look, they were not able to get their voter cards.
Well, as of today, we have a total of 988,923 voters on the voters register. This is the number that we vote during this governorship election. Out of this number, as at the 13th day of June 2022, 749,065 have collected their permanent voters cards. Now, the chairman made it very clear during the stakeholder engagements that the collection of permanent voters cards for the purposes of Ekiti governorship election was going to stop yesterday, being Thursday. This is to enable us segregate the number of PVCs collected per polling unit and per registration area and as per local government, so that accredited observers, the media, and political parties can have access to the number of persons that are eligible to vote in every polling unit and in every registration area. So we are ready for this particular election, and every PVC that has not been collected will be mopped up and then kept in self-custody pending the conclusion of the election. As you are aware, even before this present election, we devolved the registration of voters to the various registration areas. And for Ekiti State, you have a total of 177 registration areas. So we devolved the registration to all these places to enable those who have attained the age of 18 and those who have never registered before to register to vote. I want to report that the rate of collection of PVC in Ekiti State has been very high. As at the last count, over 76% of all the registered voters have collected their PVCs and are ready for this election. And the commission is also ready for this particular election.
You know that logistics, INEC had always tried to address that particular area with the election. So what is the current situation now? Because, I mean, I know they always say that all should go well, but now tell us about that.
Well, in relation to this particular election, all the sensitive materials required for the conduct of the election were flown in by the Air Force into Akure Airport on Wednesday, and they were transported to the INEC office in Ado-Ekiti under heavy security. So that was on Wednesday. And then the political parties also inspected these materials. Now, yesterday, the sensitive materials left for the 16 local government areas of Ekiti State. Domestic observers were on hand to inspect. Political parties were there, security agencies, and all other concerned Nigerians were there to see what we have done. And so the materials have already left for the various registration areas. Later tonight, they will go to the super racks and the registration area centers, from where they will be deployed at the first light on Saturday. In relation to this particular election, we don't envisage any logistic challenges. The chairman had a series of meetings with the representatives of the National Union of Road Transport Workers and with all the other agencies that are directly concerned with the movement of staff and materials. And we are confident that all will go well. We have also mopped up vehicles from the contiguous states to Ekiti. And if there's any challenge in terms of movement, we have enough vehicles to intervene and intervene decisively.
So, Okoye, permit me to take you back to the question that Chamberlain asked you about the voter register. And you said we have less than 1 million voters for this election. If that is correct, and you say that, the correct collection of PVCs have been very encouraging, I'm wondering if from, you know, the analysis that INEC has, that's a fair enough representation of the population of the state? Or is it that there are people who have registered but they do not have their PVCs ready and consequently cannot vote, or those who have their registration slips cannot vote? I don't know if that's the total population of voters on the Ekiti list of voters, or there are some. Kindly clear that, because I'm not sure if that's an adequate representation of the voting population in Ekiti.
Well, as I pointed out, the total registered voter population for Ekiti State and the total number of those who are going to vote during this election stands at 988,923. Out of this number, as at the 13th day of June 2022, 749,065 have collected their permanent voters' cards. It is possible that as at yesterday, more people have collected their permanent voters' cards in order to exercise their democratic franchise. But this is the figure I was given as at the 13th day of June 2022. So this is a fair representation. It is true that arising from previous registrations, there are some PVCs that have not been collected. But in relation to those who registered during the first and second quarter of registration exercise, and those who registered when we devolved the registration to the 177 registration areas, the rate of collection has been very, very high. And our officers have been on ground to make sure that every person who registered and wants to collect his or her PVC is given the opportunity to do so. So that is the situation as of today.
Mr. Okoye, is there a chance that anyone who is unable to collect a PVC but has the INEC slip can vote tomorrow?
No.
So it's either the PVC or you do not vote?
Exactly.
Okay. So, well, there are other issues. I don't know if my colleagues have other issues, but, you know, Chamberlain was asking you some questions the other time about logistics and all. One of those other logistic considerations is that of security. And given all of the things that have happened over time, one is wondering what the arrangement is from INEC's perspective. We know you are not a security agency, you have to collaborate. But what are the plans that will instill confidence in the voting population?
Well, 2 weeks ago, precisely between the 29th and 2nd of June 2022, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission and other national commissioners were in Ekiti State for what we call readiness assessment. And we did visit over 5 of the local governments, and we were sure of the arrangements that were made in relation to the election. We also visited some polling units in the 3 senatorial zones, where the chairman inspected what we call mock accreditation of voters. Now, in relation to the issue of security, we have had high-level meetings with the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, both at the state and national level. And just a day before yesterday, the Inspector General of Police was in Ekiti State when we had a stakeholder engagement, and then he did address the critical stakeholders and also rolled out the security arrangements that have been put in place to ensure that the voters are protected, the electoral materials are protected, and the ad hoc staff we have engaged for this particular election are protected. And I want to assure you that as at the time I left Ekiti yesterday, that the atmosphere for the election was very conducive. And yes, there were a few skirmishes here and there, but we believe that if you compare it to the various, to previous elections, you can see that the atmosphere during this particular election is very conducive for people to exercise their democratic franchise. And we are confident that the security agencies have the capacity to protect every person who wants to be peaceful and every person who wants to exercise his or her democratic franchise.
And indeed, we hope that the voters have that sense of safety and will come out en masse tomorrow to vote. But Mr. Okoye, while INEC has been commended for increasing the number of polling units by about 250. There is this concern about oversized polling units, and I wonder how that is being addressed, because the report is that there are 75 polling units with 1,000 registered voters, and in other cases, 11 polling units with 2,000 registered voters. Isn't this going to elongate voting unnecessarily tomorrow? And is it possible that that can be addressed between now and tomorrow?
No, what we have done is that in any polling unit where we have more than 750 registered voters, we are going to deploy an additional beavers to those polling areas. Now, if you look at the number of polling units for this particular election, we have a total of 2,445 polling units that will be used for this election. Now, but we have deployed a total of 3,346 beavers to Ekiti State. So we are going to have redundancies in every registration area. We have also trained enough registration area technical assistants who can intervene at a very, very short notice if there's any challenge with the beavers. But from the test runs we have done and from the work we have done, we are confident that the beavers will perform optimally and that every person who is genuinely and legally registered to vote in this election will have an opportunity of exercising his right. Right, yeah.
And there's also this concern that the mock accreditation carried out by INEC is inadequate, because there will be definitely some sections of the population that are not technologically savvy or not educated to that extent. And so that's another concern about, unnecessarily long voting process for those who do not understand the BVAS machine. How do you respond to this?
No, the understanding really relates to our own staff. What we have done was to increase the training meant for the staff of the commission and the ad hoc staff that are going to operate the beavers. And we have trained them, and we've trained them very, very, very well. So some of those minor challenges that we encountered with the beavers in previous elections will not be available during this present election, because we gave the ad hoc staff enough training to understand the workings of the beavers and also even to understand how to troubleshoot the beavers in case of any minor challenge. And so we are confident that with the level of training we gave to the ad hoc staff, that they will operate the beavers very, very well. And so the voters don't have anything to fear. So long as you have your permanent voters card, so long as you go to the polling unit, we'll first of all use your fingerprints. If your fingerprint fails, then the presiding officer or the assistant presiding officer will now use your facial to call up your to authenticate you. And then if your face fails and your fingerprint fails, the implication is that you are engaged in identity theft, and we are not going to allow you to vote.
Whoa, so will the person be handed over to the police at that point?
What we will do is to ask the person to quietly leave the polling unit. If the person does not quietly leave the polling unit, then we will do the needful.
But identity theft is a crime. If it's found out that that's what happened, shouldn't the police take over immediately from that point?
You know that on election day, the atmosphere at the various polling units can be very, very complex. And at the level of the polling unit, all the security officers that are supposed to be at the first level of the polling unit are not armed. It is at the outskirts, the second layer, that you have armed policemen. We do not want a situation where we are going to have mayhem or disruption or breakdown of law and order in any polling unit. So the first thing we need to do is to ask the person to quietly leave the polling unit, because at that point in time, we do not have the capacity to investigate what has happened. And then we need to arrest for very, very serious offenses, and we need to maintain order at the level of the polling units. I'm saying that identity theft is a crime, but at that point in time, the ad hoc staff will be engaged in making sure that everybody who attends to the polling unit gets an opportunity of voting. So we don't want any form of disruption at the level of the polling units.
I know you said that the challenges that occurred in Anambra regarding beavers, you don't expect that to repeat itself for this election in Ekiti, but there was no alternative, it turns out, because people left and went back to their homes, and they said it was widespread. So is there an alternative in the event that it happens in some areas? Because these are machines, anything can happen.
as I pointed out, we have enough redundancies to obviate any situation that arises. If I supervised the election in Anambra, and you realize that we had 2 elections in Anambra, the first election and the supplementary election in Ihiala. In Ihiala, there were no problems with the beavers because we had identified what the challenge was and we attended to that particular challenge. And since we came back from Anambra, we have had so many off-season elections. I supervised the election in Ogojayala Federal Constituency and the one in Akpabio State Constituency in Cross River. There were no challenges. We also had the election in Basa Federal Constituency and in Panshin State Constituency. There were no problems. We had the election in Akure North, Akure South, and the beavers was used. We didn't have any challenge. So we have been test running the beavers and improving on its technology. So we are confident that the beavers will perform well during this particular election.
I know the chairman identified, you spoke about vote buying being a threat in this particular election, and that in order to address that, you changed the configuration of the ballot boxes and things like that. Could you tell us what exactly is done and how are we sure that that will guarantee there will be no vote buying this time?
Well, the commission cannot, as a commission, guarantee that there won't be any vote buying in the election. But what we have done from our own perspective, from our own level, and using our own processes and procedures, is to train the ad hoc staff well on how to position the voting cubicles in such a way that the secrecy of the vote will be maintained. We have also trained them to advise the voters when they come to vote not to enter the voting compartment with any electronic gadget that can take photographs. By so doing, we believe that we can guarantee at least the secrecy of the vote, not that people will vote, snap the way they have voted and go and show somebody else. We have also had series of meetings with the ICPC, with the EFCC and other security agencies, and are going to have some of their plainclothes officers as some of the polling units to make sure that nobody comes to the principles of the polling unit to come and corrupt the process. But that is the extent to which we can go. I think that both the media, civil society groups and organizations should appeal to the political parties to allow the atmosphere at the polling units to be civil and to allow the people to exercise their franchise in a very, very democratic and secret manner without any form of inducement and without any form of threat. But I can assure you that
Mr. Okoye, if I may come in here, I want to know, talking about the process, I would like to know what the voting process is going to be like. Is there going to be accreditation first and voting later, or it's going to be seamless? As accreditation is going on, voting is also happening at the same time?
Yes, the moment a voter comes to the polling unit, the ad hoc staff who are in charge of the polling unit will first of all confirm that the person's name is on the voters register. When they confirm that the person's name is on the voters register, they will also confirm that the person has come to the voting precincts with a valid permanent voters card. And then they will use the last 6 digits of the VIN number in the permanent voters card to call up the person's data from the beavers. The data of every registered voter in each polling unit is not domiciled in the beavers, so they have to call up the data from the beavers. Then they will use the fingerprint for purposes of accreditation. If the fingerprint fails, then they will use the facials to accredit the voter. If the facial fails, the person will not be allowed to vote. But if any one of them passes, the person will be given a ballot paper and the person will go and vote.
So voting happens immediately after accreditation. From what time to what time are we expecting these votes to run for?
Well, we expect the votes to run from 8:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon. But if
by 2:30, voting should be concluded?
No, not necessarily. If by 2:30 we do not have any other person on the queue, then the presiding officer will declare voting closed. But if at 2:30 we still have people on the queue, until the last person votes, the voting will still continue. As long as there's somebody in the queue, voting will continue.
Let me quickly ask this, because there had been talks about how INEC was not going to be using the CBN as its area for storage. Did that happen in this election? What alternatives were you able to find if it did?
Well, for the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections, we decided to design a different pathway as an interim measure. So for the sensitive materials meant for Ekiti, we use the Air Force to fly in the materials into Akure Airport. And then from Akure Airport, the sensitive materials were moved directly to our state office under heavy security. And this was on Wednesday. So the security agencies were guarding where the sensitive materials were up to yesterday, when the sensitive materials were now moved to the various 16 local government areas of Ekiti State, still under security, from where they will be distributed today to the various registration area centers and super ranks.
Well, Mr. Festus Okoye, we wish you and the Commission a very successful conduct of the polls in Ekiti tomorrow. And we certainly will hook up with you as matters develop in Ekiti State. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Festus Okoye, who is a National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education at INEC. Well, let's take a break now. We'll be going to Ekiti itself to talk about what the security arrangements are when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.